Good day and welcome to a new episode of CtrlCast. This is a platform where we discuss digitization within the transport logistics space, navigating from diesel and dust to software, AI and beyond. We have an exciting guest, a dear friend of Control Fleet here today, the Managing Director of FleetIT, Steve Bure. Welcome.
Renko, thank you. Very excited to be here.
Good to have you here. Let's jump into it. Tell me about FleetIT.
Yeah, so FleetIT is, we dub it as a cost and information software that is very often thought of as like an ERP for your fleet. So really handling everything from all your fleet costs, including what you bought the vehicle for, what you sold it for, and everything in between. So your fuel, your maintenance, your inspections, everything that happens on that asset ultimately sits within FleetIT so that you can analyze and make smarter decisions around your vehicles in the future.
And focus predominantly maintenance.
Yeah, so I mean, maintenance is a big requirement. So we've realized that there's a huge need for guys to be able to better analyze their maintenance to make smarter decisions. I mean, there's a lot of fuel products out there. We have to include the fuel because it makes up a part of that overall cost. But a big core element is being able to manage both your internal and external management. So whether you've got workshops and you're doing job cards and managing your inventory smarter through to sending your vehicles out for services and managing the data of those services in a smarter way, getting alerted when to send those vehicles, and that's really where a big focus is.
Massive task, extremely relevant. Managing costs for every transporter is top of mind. I mean, how did you start this? Tell me more about your journey.
Yeah, so I mean, I come from the logistics industry, and it's actually myself and my brother that are the owners of the business. So we both were in the logistics space. Me on the commercial side, so trying to sign business, and he started as an appy mechanic for Mercedes-Benz and worked his way up to running some pretty large fleets and workshops. And in that process, we realized, sitting at a bar one day, we're going to start a business. The first version of that business is nothing to what it is now. But in the process of doing that, we realized that there was a big need for a fleet cost and information management tool. So we started building it. And I think it took us a good 3 years before we finally started hitting the market with it from, the birthing of what it was.
That's amazing. And how long have you now been fully commercialized and operational?
So we took the great decision of launching in 2020 just as COVID hit. So it was really, really fun, but took a bit of a slower start than we probably would have liked, but it's really adopted now into a really needed product. We're in 6 years now and going really well and seeing really good numbers growing. I think the adoption of customers and fleets realizing that they need this is getting greater and greater, and we're seeing it year on year that the number of fleet owners realizing the need for this kind of data and realizing the need to digitize their operations, their costs, their management of their fleet is just getting more and more important.
Couldn't agree more. I think launching 2020 is challenging, but it did sort of embark on this perfect storm right after that, right? Yeah. The timing of the need for digitization. Do you feel that urgency? Like you mentioned, are there more transporters that have sort of awakened to what they are not being able to do and now what they need?
Definitely. So I think you're right. So 2020 gave us a good place to lead from. But I think the first 2 or 3 years it was very, very new for a lot of people. They knew they wanted it. We've never had the challenge of saying a customer wants that product. The challenge is them realizing how they're going to adopt it and how they're going to implement it in their business. And even that is still the biggest challenge, because even at the moment when execs and exco decide that they want it, filtering that down to the bottom tiers is where the bigger challenge still lies. And that's a hard thing to tackle, I think, for all of us building software in the logistics space. It's as you mentioned, before, it's coming from dust and diesel. So the guys aren't used to sitting behind a computer or using a mobile app. And that's probably the biggest challenge that I think we face now, and we still have a couple of years of facing that in getting the guys to adopt these products and make sure that they get the true value out of them.
I would like to unpack the challenges, but before, let's delve a little bit to the features of FleetIT. Take us through some of the core aspects that makes the product do what it does.
Yeah. So I mean, I think when we, maybe as a step back, is when we launched FleetIT, initially it was almost like, and often seen as just a repository of information. So it was, how do we bring all this information in so they can make their smarter decisions? And we realized quickly that wasn't going to work. The source of that information wasn't coming from a good place. in most instances, especially when we're talking maintenance data. And it wasn't designed and it wasn't captured in a way that made it work well. So a big part of our process now is the job cards, purchase orders that are getting captured in the system, and following very fleet-focused requirements in capturing that. That's it. So just as a good separation is you capture a purchase order in your ERP or your accounting software, and 9 times out of 10 we see that data come back and it's a single line that they did their 750,000 K service, a clutch overhaul, replace brakes, and put 2 new tires on, and they're now supposed to analyze their data with that one line of information. Whereas, we'll enforce through a systematic way that those line items are separated, they're categorized, they're classified. Odometers are logged correctly, and through that we can then build the smart logic and algorithms in the background to link it to the service intervals, to trigger alerts that they've now replaced their clutch too early, all of that sort of stuff. So that's a big part of it. And then, the other big need around that is guys running their own workshops. So workshops have, often are very, very manual, labor intensive, and bringing digital processes into there is difficult. So a lot of the time there's stores. It's a black hole. They don't know what's sitting in that storeroom. Yeah. And it's about a big part of our features, and a big focus of ours at the moment is really enhancing the inventory management for workshops, making it simple to do it, but also introducing the ability for them to now analyze that data, make smarter decisions, picking up that stock's obsolete before it's, they're having to do a big stock take at the end of the year, or seeing what their fast movers are. And FleetIT does that through, FSN and ABC type analysis automated through the systems. And then there's a whole lot more. I mean, we could list our features for hours, but that's probably where a lot of the core is also making it the tool for them to use is really critical.
I assume fuel. I mean, close to probably 50-60% of expense. A lot of focus on that?
Yes, definitely. The one difference with fuel is we're not typically the source of that information. There's some great products out there, some of the guys that even you guys as Control Fleet partner with, where we bring that fuel data in. But we'll manage everything from the fuel stock, the browser management, being able to process those purchase orders and the usage of that stock in FleetIT as well. And then through to triggering, analyzing that fuel data. So as the fuel costs come in, we've built a lot of really smart algorithms that help customers identify when there's theft and fraud happening in the business. We also realize that there's a big need for a fuel analyst team, so we've implemented that. So all our customers get a dedicated fuel analyst. So they analyze that fuel data, help them pick up when there's theft and fraud, clean the data when bad, ODOs get inputted. Although the system alerts it, we've realized that, operators are busy and they don't have time to fix data. So we try and help them with that. But it's a big element. And I mean, we did an analysis with the customer the other day where over the last 4 years of them working with us, I think overall they saw a 20% savings in their fuel, and on a fuel bill of a couple million a year, you can only imagine that kind of savings to their bottom line.
That's proper. You personally, do you find yourself more behind the desk or in the workshop and within the diesel and dash?
Geez, I love not being behind the desk, but it's hard not to be behind the desk. We're still a growing business. As much as 5-6 years, we've grown nicely, and we've got teams that are really know what they're doing. But I still get very multi-capped in the business. So, wear many hats, help a lot. I still get very excited about the features that we build. So I get very involved in the product development and working with our dev team. I mean, that's probably one of the more exciting things. So whilst I'm not necessarily helping the guys in the workshops, our customer success team really do a good job of, helping the guys get settled and using the system. I like hearing what their problems are, what else we can do to really solve that need. And I think that's one of the best things about building a product like this. And I think you probably see it yourself, is that, when a customer has a problem and you're able to actually solve that by just, creating a slight nuance to that feature, it's really, really rewarding.
No, I mean, you're a dear friend of Control Fleet. You've been at all 3 of our digital dynamic events. This year, the network effect. Speaking of that integrations, how many type of integration discussions are you guys having? I mean, I assume the type of integrations are endless.
Yeah. So I mean, a big part of our integration processes or requirements at the moment is ERP integration. So ERP or accounting, depending on the level of that business. So that's where a lot of our integration focus is. But it is becoming completely, guys are wanting all their systems integrated. So I think I mentioned it at the event the other day, is that partnerships are important because it creates an ecosystem, not just one single system. And bringing together all those systems and making sure they're all integrating and helping each other work together helps the customer get that end result. Because I think one of the things we've seen, and we've even seen it in our shared customers, is that the drivers will run the Control Fleet app and do their processes, and now it's important that that information comes back into FleetIT. The same way as that the workshop mechanic is going to do the inspections in FleetIT, and that's going to then integrate into Control Fleet, and that relationship makes it ensure that both systems are valuable to the business. And it's important. When I don't believe a fleet owner is ever going to get to a point to have a single product that will solve all their problems. They need all these systems working together. It's about finding which is the right one of those 4 or 5 systems, and how do they work together to make it work. And that's exactly where we are. I mean, we're doing, integrations are literally 30%, 40% of most new business conversations.
Completely concur. You mentioned it at the event. We're not trying to be one singular platform that does everything, and we share that motto at Control Fleet completely. I mean, the idea of us trying to venture into how to manage stock, where we can just integrate and give that client best of breed. That's the motto, and it really is fruitful. It shows. Tell me, you mentioned you have some exciting external integrations in terms of insurance. Do you want to just unpack that?
So we've just launched quite a nice project that we're rolling out for one of our customers. They had a big pain point in just the requirements to do that whole insurance process. It's a very paper-based process that has to happen. So we've managed to integrate with some of their own internal tools, as well as then using our own insurance claim process within FleetIT. And so basically, the minute an accident happens, that claim gets automatically triggered into FleetIT through a debrief on one of their internal tools. That then starts that whole claim process, brings through the vehicle and driver information because that's already sitting in FleetIT. So half of that claim form is already pre-populated. They just have to input a couple of the extra information elements. And then the real key elements is all the maintenance costs that are incurred during that claim. So whether it's sending the vehicle out for purchase orders raised for sending the vehicle out for repairs, whether they do certain work in their workshop and raise job cards, all those costs are now linked to that claim. So instead of now having to go search for all the costs and put the final report together for the insurer, it all gets put together and linked into one single view for them at a claim level, at a reporting level, making it really simple.
Let's unpack a little bit of those challenges. Digitizing, onboarding, building features that are relevant. It's a life stage, right? And it varies. What challenges are you currently experiencing on just taking the product to market?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we have is adoption across the entire business. I think I mentioned earlier that at an exco level, they know they want it, they know it's going to add value, but often the line stops there, and the guys on the ground making sure that they're actually using the product and doing it, capturing everything in there. That's probably the biggest challenge. And again, we come straight back to that whole integration process. By integrating it, we kind of solve that a little bit because we then ensure that the guys that operate in what they're supposed to operate in, whatever the tool that is, and that writes into FleetIT or the other way around. And that helps us close that gap. But definitely adoption is probably our biggest challenge. And I think we see, we often walk into a customer that's been using us for a year, and we still find down at the workshop floor, they've got their book or their little whiteboard that they're writing down everything before they capture it at the same time they're capturing it into FleetIT. And so a lot of the guys in the logistics space, not only just transporters, I think across the board, if you're in the fleet and logistics space, is that I don't know if they trust that a system is really going to solve that problem or have everything for them. And there's that big fear that at some point they're not going to see it on the system and they're going to come under fire for that. So they have their paper and their book that they're writing everything down. They've got all their orders ticked there, and it's adopting them from that manual process to really rely and trust that the system is going to do the trick for them. In saying that, it's something that's definitely getting better and better and better. I can even go 6 months back and I can see that, customers are just definitely finding the ability to adopt products, whichever product it is, much, much better.
Do you see that challenge in specific types of clients, size of fleet, or is it hard to categorize why certain transporters are not, getting to that true digitization?
So I'll be honest, I actually first thought exactly that your smaller fleets were tougher to adopt than your bigger fleets, because your bigger fleets is bigger resources, more opportunity, more business processes, SOPs in place, all of that. But I don't think it actually makes a big difference. I think that regardless of the size, there is continuously an adoption element that needs to be overcome. The size of that adoption element changes, but I think that's it's across the board still. I wouldn't even go. We walk into some small fleet. I've got a customer with 6 vehicles that operates like they have 6,000 vehicles, just in terms of processes they've got in place. Yes, it's easier on a smaller fleet, but they run their business. They've obviously come from a very corporate lifestyle or approach, and they're able to implement it. And then I've got into a customer with 2,000 vehicles, and they've got the biggest whiteboard I've ever seen in my life. People are completely non-digital at all. And when you think about I won't say which customer it is, but if some people had to know how manual that specific customer was, it would be quite an eye opener.
I understand much more than you think. I've been in a couple of those big rooms. Tell me about your reach. South African based, regional. Where are your clients?
Yeah, I think the beauty of technology is it can be anywhere, right? So our customer base, we've got customers all over Africa, a little bit of Middle East. We do still think that there's a big focus in South Africa. I think it's still such an untapped market, so we don't want to really venture too far out when we've still got a big problem to solve in South Africa itself. But in saying that, we especially Africa, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and some really big. As South Africans, we often don't realize how big some of these African fleets are. These fleets out in Africa, Zambia, Tanzania, even Zims and Mozambique. They have really big, great operations. You walk into some of those operations and they run really phenomenally because they don't have the same resources available around the country. So we're seeing a lot of that growth. And then, we've got even scenarios where we've got a global customer based in the UK with operations all throughout Africa, and that we deal with guys in Europe and in the UK as well.
Tech is really borderless. So you mentioned reach Africa, Middle East. How would you compare the complexity that you're solving from a tech perspective when you look at the different regions?
Let's eliminate language barriers, because that's probably one of the toughest problems in terms of just implementing a software at another in different countries and different territories. I think that probably in some of the especially Africa, if we're talking Africa, is that they rely very self-reliant because there isn't as many resources around the country. So whilst they might be a big fleet and they're running like any other big global blue chip type company, they don't have the support of global blue chip type services to serve them, whereas in South Africa they do. So getting a digital PO out, or and making sure that stock supply is happening when they need it, that changes. So you often find that they become their own ecosystem of solutions, right? So they're their own fuel supplier because there isn't enough fuel suppliers around the country, so, or they're their own, they become the distributor of half the parts because they're such a big buyer in that area that they actually distributing the parts to other smaller trucking companies. So we often see that, and that opens up a new world. So suddenly, instead of us having to just worry about buying and bringing workshop parts in, we're also having to help them figure out how do they invoice it out, because now they're selling it to someone. And so, that birthed a whole new feature that we launched now, where you can now, convert purchase orders and job cards into an invoice. So you can invoice out a subcontractor, a third party, a buyer for the work that you've done.
That means you don't really customize per client. Single SaaS model, updates are given across the board.
100%. Customization is something I don't like that word because it opens up a world of unnecessary work. And I think we believe that no fleet operates in its own silo. They might do what they do in their own silo at one point, but at the end of the day, learning from them can help another customer. So we believe that if we can take something that they need, there's a good chance that there's at least 10, 15, 20% of our customers that are going to get that same benefit. It's all, the system's structured in a way that, if the customer doesn't want the user to be able to do that function, it's just permission-based and they don't do it. So it's not forcing it down their throat. but it opens up a new world of opportunities. And we've done a lot of that where, we've introduced something to a customer's helped us or given us the idea to build a product or feature. And then we've introduced it to a new customer, and it's been this, massive, big light for them on they can now do something so much smarter. And, so we're leveraging our customers, making us the big brainchild. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, and I completely understand, we've launched a customer advisory board in speaking into that, because sometimes the way that we can listen to our clients and react to that's the golden string in building the right tech.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you foresee transporters in where they are now, asking for more integration of other best of breed systems, or trying to leverage the systems they have to do more?
I think both. I think that they do need to leverage their systems. I think they've got to be, transporters have to be careful of using 10% of 10 systems, and sometimes that happens because there's so many scenarios to it, because I think a lot of the times a lot of systems build out lots of little features to help solve a gap, but they don't do that function 100%. So I think they need to try and understand where each player's wheelhouse is, make sure that they get the most out of that player's strength, and then integrating the systems together. I think what's also important when we talk integrations is a massive buzzword in fleet, in systems and fleets, and they just want everything integrated together. But sometimes it's good to also ask why. Because you start challenging what are they going to get out of bringing that information into that system, or into that, what are they going to use it for? And often they realize they just needed part of getting it across the line is saying that the two systems integrate, but do they actually add value? Does that integration make sense? Because they're inevitably going to run in two different places. So sometimes it's okay that information is siloed in that system, but other times it doesn't. And sometimes integration is a very powerful opportunity, and I think especially as we embark on the whole AI space, and leveraging what AI can do, the more you can bring more information together into single places, the more you're going to get the value out of that AI. So that's another benefit to it.
AI. So let's unpack that. I think it's a term widely used. Many transporters, I believe, are sort of leapfrogging themselves, sometimes to their own detriment in terms of expectations of what it can or should do, and when they are ripe for that or not. What's your take on what's relevant now for transporters in your space when it gets to AI?
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows, to be honest. I think there's this, often, guys are still using ChatGPT like Google, and to just write documents. So they can write very fast, and they can find information quickly, but they're not actually using it to be a very, very powerful tool, especially in the fleet space. The guys are just trying to figure out that there's a system that can actually do the inspection without writing it on a piece of paper. To now say, okay, well, but now we're going to AI everything I think you used a great word, is leapfrogging it a little bit. I think over the next couple of years, a big part of it is us, as both the service providers and as the operators, we need to work together in understanding what is AI going to add, where is it going to add value to the business. And there's going to be a lot of trial and error in that process. So, we're building out some features where, building like ChatGPT within FleetIT in a sense, so you can, without having to pull 5 reports to figure out when, last a vehicle maintenance was done or when last brakes were replaced, you can easily just search for that and find it very, very, very quickly. But that's just, again, it's like Google and FleetIT, right? It's not really leveraging AI to what AI is capable of. I think the opportunity of AI is really bringing systems together, automating tasks, helping make sure that the users are saving time. Like what you want to get is that a user, the fleet industry is always overworked. The common thread is they work until 10 at night, they start at 2 in the morning, their phone's ringing all the time. AI should be changing that, but I don't think we know how yet, and I think there's a lot of learnings to get there.
Oh, well said, well put. Some of the examples you have deployed, have you seen a benefit of time saving, cost saving? Like, has there been some overarching benefit that's?
So we're still so new in this space.
Yeah.
I think we're right now we're just trying to do smart things with the data that exists. Yeah. I think a big part of it is we're still trying to make sure that our customers' data is clean, right? Because it's important. AI is useless if you've got bad data. The whole concept of bad data in, bad data out is going to be the same problem when you bring in and introduce AI analysis into it, right? Or any form of analysis. So right now we're just trying to get that right. And we're building a lot in the background, testing it in some spaces. I think where there's a lot of opportunity is eliminating manual tasks. And that's what our next phase is. Once we've got the analysis and the finding. So the first step for us was finding information quicker, finding what you need quicker, because we've realized that's one of the biggest problems is, we don't have to train you which is the exact specific report to find that solution. Now we can just say, use that search little icon and it's going to find, if you type in the right request, it's going to find you what you want. The next step is automating processes. And that could be as simple as, getting a handwritten quote from a supplier and having that turn into a purchase order. And that's one of the things we're working on in the background.
Let's unpack reports. Obviously, that's an end result of a lot of the effort, profit and loss, our integration from Control Feet has given us, the ability that all the deep lining expenses that you are managing and the revenue that comes from our side, the combination is extremely powerful. You want to unpack what reports you're building out and where that's going?
Yeah, so we look at, we see reporting at the moment in 3 different ways. So one is transaction reports, just listing information, identifying it. The other is, trended reports and finding, seeing trends. And the last one is, your deeper calculated reports. So, really understanding over a period what your different CPKs were. And for us, it's cost per kilometer. and where you're spending your money on. So we have a lot of reports like that. A lot of it is also reconciliation reports with introducing a lot of ERP accounting integrations. A critical factor on that is making sure and ticking the box for the finance team that they can reconcile their data easier and make sure that what's in FleetIT is sitting in their accounting software. So that's a lot of where it is. However, like when we're talking reports, I think that there's a big movement in people wanting to see so much of information, and that it's always changing. So the guys sit in an Exco meeting, and today they want to see the graph in this way with this information, and next Exco it's suddenly changed. So what we're finding a big move on is that customers are needing to implement their own BR tools to do their own reporting, and we need to feed that information or give them access to the information in the way that and then they can do with it what they want, and that makes it. Then they can bring in their sales figures, their revenue, their HR details, all of the different systems that exist in their business. All that information comes together, and they can actually then splice and dice it in any which way they want. And that's where a lot of our customers are, and it's giving them a lot more tools. So reports are always going to be there because not every customer is going to implement a full BR solution. But for our bigger, more advanced customers, that's definitely the direction. Is rather feed the information to them in a more raw way that they can then analyze in any way they want.
Spot on. So one of the customary questions we ask all our guests is to look into the crystal ball, but freight forecast. So taking a estimate, let's say 24 months from now, how do you see the digitization in the transport space evolving?
Yeah, I suppose AI obviously is probably one of the key elements around what is everybody going to do around that. My prediction in 24 months is I don't think we're going to see a significant change in the fleet and logistics and operator space when it comes to AI usage, as we've sort of mentioned. But I think we are going to see people adopting systems a lot better. That's going to make it that maybe in 5 years that is a more real opportunity. But 2 years in logistics and in tracking goes very, very, very fast. So I think it's going to be a big process of figuring out how to implement those solutions so that they can get the benefit of this ever-changing world of AI data, AI information, AI automation, helping their business. So the next 2 years is really about getting that right. And I think that's maybe why we're seeing a big growth in guys now realizing they need to digitize their business, because they've realized that to get the benefit of this new digital world that's evolving throughout our economy, they need to digitize the things, and AI is not going to help their whiteboard figure out what their next service interval is. They're going to need it on a system.
Freight foe. Any myth that you want to debunk when it comes to digitization?
I've got loads, but probably still one of my biggest ones is that my tracking product's going to do all of it for me. There's this, and nothing against the tracking telematics guys, and a lot of the guys have evolved quite a lot in that. But there's still this expectation that that device that's sitting in their vehicle is going to help them execute their routes better. It's going to help them figure out when their vehicles are due for service, what maintenance is required. And yes, it is doing a lot of that, but I do think that they need specialist products to really dig deeper into that. And again, back to the, your Dynamics event the other day, is the ecosystem of those systems working together is really where we need to go. And I think the more customers realize that, the more they're going to really start seeing the value and pushing that needle to become more profitable, to become more efficient, and really change the game in the operating space.
Okay, Steve, so now we're getting to the stage where we do the rapid fire round. So these are questions that require one answer or quick phrase. First question, what is that one metric that most of your clients are asking to manage better?
Accurate CPK.
If you hear the following phrase, what pops up? Our fleet is underperforming.
Clean your data.
Out of the list of endless expenses transporters have to manage, which is the expense you frequently levitate to?
Fuel or tires?
What is your favorite expense to manage?
Servicing on time.
Thanks, Stephen. I've really enjoyed this, and there's so many similarities in terms of how you're approaching this space and the type of clients, obviously, that we deal with mutually. If we can end off with a tip takeaway from yourself for transporters navigating into digitization and specifically managing maintenance and expenses, what would you say?
Yeah, I think that firstly, thanks. It's been a really great experience. I've enjoyed it. I think from a tips perspective, I would definitely suggest that operators aren't scared of implementing a system, and that when they do, they make sure that they see it through. It's not a magic wand that's going to give them results in 3 months. They need to implement it. They need to make it part of their business and rely on that product. And the more they do, they're going to see the results at the end of the day. And I think just in even if they don't implement a system for it, just in terms of managing things better is I mentioned a few times, get your data clean your data. It's so important that they have the right information at their fingertips. So don't accept mediocrity when it comes to the type of data that's been accepted. Don't let the business think that because they're so busy that half capturing or not putting in the right effort and following the right rules is okay, because it will affect their decision making at the later stage. They're not going to be able to make those smarter, quicker decisions, and that is what every single fleet person or operator or owner wants, and that's why they're looking at all these systems, because they want to be able to make smarter decisions and ultimately be a more profitable business.
Excellent. And that's a wrap for our episode with Steve Bure from FleetIT, truly a friend of Control Fleet and an industry leader when it comes to digitalization within this diesel and dust space. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode in CtrlCast as we navigate through this exciting journey.